this is on, and then forward back.
Okay, and it's just gonna be on, right?
I swear it was working.
Oh, there we go.
Hi. Is it supposed to play?
No.
Okay. We can get a different one if it's not working that well. Seems like it's not. Let's get a different one.
Jumped into your conversation with Gabby earlier, sorry. As I was walking over here, I was just thinking that I would just tell you that Girls' Visions and Everything was the gift I gave to everyone. Like a decade. Yeah. I remember making a mixtape that was just a cassette recorder. Girls' Visions and Everything interspersed with like soulful songs, Jane Seabury, or I even gave it to a lover, so yeah. Give it away. It's really pretty. Wait, hold up. This one's not. We're told it not. Oh. It's fine. Yeah. Oh, you can pressing forward. Forward, not. Yeah. It looks fine. Okay. Yeah. I wonder. Everyone's on like, that's bad, right? I did add you to a group. Okay. Good, it's good too. You're also a somebody that I can. Here, I'll text you all, yeah. Can you say, thank you, you all. I will say. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Check in. So I, this is, so I think. Oh, no, I've got it. Yours is second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll do it. You won't have to worry. Thank you, Beth. Sure. Oh my gosh. Migrating back. Yeah. Yeah, I bet the sound is great. I just have a feeling the sound is fantastic. Look at Cecilia. Hello, everyone. I'm supposed to check the sound. I think the sound is great. Yeah. Okay, good. Rogue. Rogue. Find your chair. No. No such thing as my chair. In fact, I might sit over here. Because I just got in a couch. You're the talent, so you have to be I feel the fact that there's couches so comfy. How's it's because we were renovating. Welcome. What happened?
Okay, woo! Gabby, here's to you guys. I love to start off an event with a round of applause for no real reason. It's really just, why not? Because we're here. Is it a gorgeous day? Did you all work really hard on making art and writing art? Did you have a nice breakfast? Enjoy the coffee and the tea? Have stimulating conversations? Have some really great time out in nature? Yeah, that's a very round of applause. My name, as you probably know, is anybody here who hasn't been here the last 2 nights? Put up your hand. All right, so some of you don't know my name. So for everyone else, check their Instagrams. I'm going to say, my name is David Simpson. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the program director here at the Fine Arts Work Center. I'm just going to go talk to you. I'm going to take it on the road. There'll be 2 shows a night going to Vegas. I'm David Simpson. I'm the program director, as you know. So glad you're here. We have a great faculty event tonight. Tonight we're going to hear from poet Gabrielle Calvocoressi. We're very excited. So excited to welcome Gabby back after a 1-year absence on so many levels. And then we also are going to hear from Cecilia Ruiz. Cecilia Ruiz. Printmaker and illustrator extraordinaire, and we're so glad to have her back for the 2nd year, and we're really happy about that. So Gabby will be signing books at the back of the room after the event. And Cecilia, right, of course, yes, also. I'm fucking up all over the place. All right, so I need a little bit more coffee. Check out the gallery. The exhibition is beautiful. Check out the books at the back and in our bookstore in the middle. You've seen the beautiful T-shirts. Some of you have bought them. I've seen. So the beautiful new T-shirts are awesome. They're my favorite thing. And also, I took a look at the sign-up sheet just before coming over here, and I'm pleased. Have my expectations been fully met? No. There is still plenty of empty lines. So if you haven't done so already, Carmen, where are you? There you are. I encourage you all to sign up. You will not regret it. It's a great experience. So I'm not going to say any more about that until tomorrow. So let's not give me any more microphone time. I can't stop though without giving a shout out to East End Books for managing our bookstore, and also a big shout out to the East End Books, Jeff Peters, wonderful partner. Also a shout out to the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod and Cape Cod 5 Foundation, who so generously support our public programming in the summer. And Cushions, you know where they are. Assisted listening devices, and now I'll stop. And right now I'd like to invite one of Gabby's students to the stage to introduce them. Can I please welcome Lisa Moore to the stage?
Hi, everybody. I got here just in time. So the first person to recommend Gabrielle Calvocoressi's work to me was my friend Deborah Paredes, one of the founders of the Latinx poetry organization Canto Mundo. Although we both lived in Austin at the time, we met up in Albuquerque, where an early Canto Mundo gathering was happening and where I was passing through on my way to the Taos Writers' Workshop. It was early in my own journey as a poet. I knew a lot more about the Romantics than I did about contemporary poetry. What queer poet should I invite to give a reading? I asked Deborah. She said, I just finished the most fantastic book, Apocalyptic Swing. It's by Gabrielle something. She dug the book out of her bag, Gabrielle Calvocoressi. That was the first time I heard that name. I bought the book right away, loved its joyful, arcing movements and melancholy returns. I had the opportunity to invite someone to be a poet in residence in the English department at UT Austin that year, and I wanted to invite Gabrielle Calvocoressi. But believe it or not, young people, in those early days of the internet, around 2011, I could not find her contact information. Deborah didn't know how to get in touch with them. Gabby's publisher didn't reply to my email. Believe it or not, Facebook had only been around in the lives of people like me, at least, for about a year or two. So it took me a minute before I thought to look there. I messaged Gabby on Facebook and offered them the job, and she accepted by return message. Yay, Facebook. Now, that's not even a story anymore, an anecdote, but at the time it was like, can you believe somebody got a job on Facebook? Now it would be like, yeah, or LinkedIn, I guess, would be the alternate, you know. Gabby was my very first poetry workshop teacher, and I've been waiting since then to get into her class again. Yay, Fine Arts Work Center. Gabby has done so much beautiful work that I can't mention it all here, plus she told me not to. Her books, the last time I saw Amelia Earhart, Apocalyptic Swing, which was a finalist for the LA Times Book Prize, and Rocket Fantastic, winner of the Audre Lorde Award for Lesbian Poetry, are now on a lot of people's lists. And her poems have appeared everywhere from the New York Times to the Paris Review to poetry. Most recently, she was the Beatrice Shepherd Blane Fellow at the Harvard-Radcliffe Institute for 22-23. Her works in progress include a nonfiction book entitled The Year I Didn't Kill Myself, and a novel, The Alderman of the Graveyard. Gabby teaches at UNC Chapel Hill and lives in Old East Durham, North Carolina, where joy, compassion, and social justice are at the center of their personal and poetic practice. What an honor to introduce Gabrielle Calvocoressi.
Hi, everyone. Then I poured this all over whatever this, oh. I saw that once in Provincetown. You know what's funny is that when I went off Facebook finally, I thought to myself, this was just like a couple of years ago, but there was that time I got that job at UT Austin. I'm so grateful to be here. Let me just set my timer, 1 hour and 17 minutes. I'm so happy to be here. I took last year off. What a mistake. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank all of you. It's such an honor to be here. Every single time I come here, my remarkable students who are my teachers, the unbelievable, like other faculty that I get to spend time with who are also friends, just the incredible staff. I feel like that's not even the right word. Like staff is a sacred word, but also like staff, like a wizard's staff, right? Like David and Sarah and Chandra and Hannah and Fatima and Naya. I just want to thank all of you so much. I always tell this story when I come, but I think it's worth telling because there are new people here. I came here first as a student in 1997. I was in that classroom up there, which is wild to teach in the same classroom I was a student in. And you know, when I came here in 1997, I had been a student at Sarah Lawrence, and then, ooh, someone's looking in. Come in. Hi. We're the poetry reading. I'm Gabby. Come on in. I had been a student at Sarah Lawrence, and then I graduated, and I had like saved up my money, and I took a workshop with this poet in New York who I really, really admired, I thought. And 3 classes in, they pulled me aside. They said, can I talk to you after class? And I said, yeah. And they took me aside, and they told me I had such a great imagination, and I was so smart, but I was a terrible poet, and that I should never write again. Isn't it amazing what our teachers do for us sometimes? You know, like, yeah. And I mean, and they were really certain. Like, they were just like, you really, and they told me not to come back to class. Like, they were just like, there's nothing for you here, you know? Like, just go have a life. So I did I mean, I don't know. Some people are born with, like, tremendous confidence, but I didn't know. I was like, oh, God. And I was so embarrassed somehow. Like, you know, you get embarrassed. And I stopped for a while. Like, I stopped for a number of months. And then I thought to myself, well, I'm going to I'm gonna take Marie Howe's class at the Work Center. Like I have a little bit of money left. Like I was the worst administrative assistant in the world, and I saved my money from how bad I was at my job, like, you know, and so I came to the Work Center, and I thought if Marie tells me that I can't do it, then like, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll know something. And I came here, and that's not what happened. And it's not what happened, I think, because I have some amount of talent, but I also think it's not what happened because this just isn't what this place is about, right? There was one kind of pedagogy that I was given in that moment. And then I came here, and another kind of pedagogy was presented to me, which is hopefully the pedagogy that I've really guided my life with, because as I often say, you know, I was at Sarah Lawrence with so many people, Mark Doty, Marie, all these people who were living up in Provincetown. They were coming back and forth, many of them also taking care of people with AIDS. And I always say, like, this place taught me in many ways how to be a teacher, but it just also taught me how to be a person. And so I just say to everyone here, gosh, I'm so like enamored of the people who just know how great they are. Like, God bless you. And also, like, if you're one of those people, because I think people do come here maybe even in a different way than they come to some other places, not quite knowing, like, that's also a kind of mastery, right? To come into yourself and say, I'm gonna come and just see what happens. And I was one of those people too, and so it's a great pleasure to be here with all of you, and I'm always grateful. I'm just gonna read some poems. For me, like a new book every 8 years seems like about the sweet spot, maybe 15, I don't know. So, we were talking about Grace Paley. This is a poem with its title is first sentence of a story by Grace Paley. It's called I Was Popular in Certain Circles. I was popular in certain circles, among the river rats and the leaves, for example. I was huge among the lichen, and the waterfall couldn't get enough of me. And the gravestones, I was hugely popular with the gravestones, also with the meat liquefying beneath. I'd say to the carrion birds, I'd say, are you an eagle? I can't see so well. That made them laugh until we were screaming, eagle, imagine. The vultures loved me so much, they'd feed me the first morsel from their delicate talons, which is what I called them, such delicate talons. They loved me so deeply, they'd visit in pairs, one to feed me, one to cover my eyes with its velvety wings, which were heavy as theater curtains, which I was sure to remark on. Why can't I see what I'm eating, I'd say. And the wings would pull me into the great bird's chest, and I'd feel the nail inside my mouth. What pals I was with the scavengers and the dead things too, what pals. As for the living, the fox would not be outdone. We'd sit on the cliff's edge and watch the river like a movie, and I'd say, I think last night. And the fox would put his paw on top of mine and say, forget it, it's done. I mean, we had fun. You haven't lived until a fox has whispered something the ferns told him in your one good ear. I mean, truly, you have not lived. I read that because we've been talking about foxes here at Provincetown. Thanks to the fox. And there are so many poems in my last book that have foxes because it used to be that there were, I love the renovation, but there used to be windows here too, and you would be reading and you'd look and there'd just be like some foxes like sitting outside. So like, what do you do with a fox? What does a fox do with you? An act of the imagination. So many things are acts of the imagination. We come here to just like build and make, and it's joyous and hard and all these things. And yet I also think, like a bomb is the act of someone's imagination, right? Like weapons that kill tens of thousands of people in Palestine. Somebody thought that up. If you put this with this and you do this and Supreme Court rulings, somebody's imagining something. what do we do, right? So one of the things I think about all the time is like the power I have, and then don't ever write again. Get out of this classroom. And then like, what else could I do with that power? Sometimes it's nice to level someone, right? And that's awful. Then it's like, ooh. Mayflower, also like, I came from a family who was really proud that we were like on the Mayflower. There's probably other people in here. I will say we were the first family to fall off the Mayflower, which very on brand. Mayflower cistern, I feel my pilgrim worry. All day long I feel my pilgrim worry, crude and unforgiving as the buckle on my boots. I mark the boundaries of the town, and then I build a fence. I build a pillory and a scaffold. I bring my gun into the forests and my axe. Inside me, I hurl my brittle body at the pines. I have a plan for them, a way to make them useful, which is God's compact with the world. Whatever does not welcome me, I tear asunder. Whatever welcomes me was mine to sack and bring to my knees. I give the gift of my hunger to everyone, and then I build a fence. The doe is certainly a sorceress. The sparrow was the woman smiling into the mirror of the well. What will I make of this country inside me? My pilgrim huddles in the corner of my heart, which I hate for its hopeful sounding, its unwillingness to know the truth of how broken and beyond salvation it is. Like, what are you going to do with it? Some of us grew up being taught to fight like animals, and we're treated like animals. And what do you do? Animals are also such gentle things. Animals are just who they are. So I shouldn't even say about animals. We're worse than the animals a lot of the time. I miss my friends. COVID, I miss so many friends. And when I come here, I always think of the ghosts. Lucy Brock-Broido, rest. Mary Oliver, rest. My dearest Randall Keenan, rest. This is for my dear friend Jenny Tonpahot, who had, as a number of my friends did, the audacity to die during COVID, not of COVID. Who knew you could do that? Miss you. Would like to grab that chilled tofu that we love. Do not care if you bring your light body. Would just be so happy to sit at the table and talk about the menu. Miss you. Wish we could bet which chilies they'll put on the cubes of tofu, our favorite, sometimes green, sometimes red, roasted, we always thought, but so cold and fresh. How did they do it? Wish you could be here to talk about it like it was so important. Wish you could. Watched you on the screens as I was walking, as I was cooking. Wished you could get out of the hospital. Can't bring myself to order our dish and eat it in the car. Miss you laughing, miss you coming in from the cold and one too many meetings, laughing. I'll order already. I'll order 7 helpings, some dumplings, those cold yam noodles that you like. You can come in your light body or skeleton or be invisible. I don't even care. No, you have a long way to travel. No, I don't even know if it's long at all. Wish you could tell me what you're reading. If you're reading, miss you. I'm at the table in the back. Oh, thanks. When I wrote that poem, and I still feel this way, some of these little Miss You poems, all of a sudden a lot of people read them in various places. And I just said, like, could you, if everyone made Miss You poems, I didn't like want to write a poem that could like bring the dead back. I don't know why, but that wasn't something, like I was like, well, maybe they like it there. Maybe my grandmother loves heaven, I don't know. But like, what if the portal could just open for a second and we could like all like shimmer and stand together? So I know you all have been given prompts for tomorrow for your class, but if you also wanted to write a Miss You poem, I believe this place is a portal. Just putting it out there. Hi, live stream. Great time to go get popcorn. We could open the portal. She ties my bow tie. My partner ties my bow tie, although she would say, she comes here tomorrow, Angeline comes tomorrow, but she would say, I don't tie your bow tie, I fix your bow tie. And I say to her, I'm like, but that's not a good name for a poem. She fixes my bow tie. She ties my bow tie. What you thought was the sound of the deer drinking at the base of the ravine was not their soft tongues entering the water, but my love tying my bow tie. We were in our little house just up from the ravine. Forgive yourself. It's easy to mistake her wrists for the necks of deer. Her fingers move so deftly, one could call them skittish, though not really because they aren't afraid of you. I know, you thought it was the deer, but they're so far down, you couldn't possibly hear them. No, this is the breeze my love makes when she ties me up and sends me out into the world. Her breath pulled taut and held until she's through. I watch her in the mirror, not even looking at me. She's so focused on the knot and how to loop the silk into a bow. I mean, portal, miss you. Would like to take a walk with you. Do not care if you just arrive in your skeleton. Would love to take a walk with you. Miss you. Would love to make you shrimp saganaki like you used to make me when you were alive. Love to feed you, sit over steaming bowls of pilaf, little roasted tomatoes covered in pepper and nutmeg. Miss you. Would love to walk to the post office with you. Bring the ghost dog. We'll walk past the waterfall and you can tell me about the after. Wish you would come back for a while. Don't even need to bring your skin sack. I'll know you. I know you'll know me even though I'm bigger now, grayer. I'll show you my garden. I'd like to hop in the leaf pile you raked, but if you want to jump in, I'll rake it for you. Miss you. Standing, looking out at the river with your rake in your hand. Miss you in your puffy blue jacket. They're hip now. I can bring you a new one if you'll only come by. No, I told you it was okay to go. No, I told you it was okay to leave me. Why'd you believe me? You always believed me. Wish you would come back so we could talk about truth. Miss you. Wish you would walk through my door, stare out from the mirror, come through the pipes. I mean, I feel like she's almost here. I have this beekeeper whose body, I just wish I was. Justin? No, I won't read that one, but come talk to me about it. I don't know, what's the word for that, right? It's not an erotic love. It's not a sexual love. It's just oh, I just saw the body I imagined my whole life for myself. I'm like a beautiful beekeeper. However, my perimenopausal body cistern, disappointing, how surprising. Bled all day, stopped bleeding, bled some more. Went to the doctor who reached inside the woman body I try to live with, make peace with, but also ignore. Sad tenant, my uterus. One day the tenant turned out to be my landlord. All day, I wonder what it means. Clock, no, I know as well as I know anything, but also never wanted and also won't give up. In the history of my light body, it will show I could have been another. The shots, the surgeon's blade, that freedom. But I hold on, not out of fear, well maybe, but also this body I fought for. Timid skin sack that grew into a kind of magnificence I'd not expected. I tie my bow tie around my neck. That's not quite the neck I want, but still the neck survived. Hours on the floor begging for my life, bent head crying in the bathroom, bent head walking by the boys, yelling hog and dog and ugly as an animal. It's confusing. I protect the breasts that I live without in my mind's eye. I looked for hours at men's trousers and kimonos and bleed all day. My mind says take it out, and though it's one step closer to the true self I wanted, also I'd miss it in ways I can't explain. burnt off scroll. I'm a mirror of a mirror. When I was 8 at daycare, my friends pulled me aside to talk about a sex change. All of us in our Catholic uniforms, Meg, Emily, Nadine, and Brian, who got kicked out because of me. That's later in the story. We drew me in the sand. We planned and wondered how much it cost to be another body. But now, I know my body. I pull up my pants and feel the lack of one thing as the muffin top reminds me of the persistence of another. Me, who's with me always. This pillow that looked over me, pillow of skin and fat that I'd call Rubenesque. It tried its best to cover me, so I worry over it. Strange companion, this body that covers me and bleeds all day without ceasing. I say, come on. I say, stop, like I used to when I'd get too scared of one thing or another. God comes back to find me in the most confounding ways. Me and my body, who are often not the same. Yeah, what a pleasure to be here. Thanks, everybody.
Cecilia, that's a tough act to follow. The only person. Can we have another big hand of applause for Gabrielle Calvocoressi? Amazing. And thank you, Lisa, for that wonderful introduction. That was really lovely. And in that spirit, I would like to invite to the stage one of our all-star summer program assistants, Hannah River, to introduce Cecilia Ruiz. Hannah, come on up.
Thank you, Gabrielle. That was so lovely. I'm really excited to introduce Cecilia Ruiz. She is an author, illustrator, and graphic designer. Her clients include the New York Times, Google, Hermes, and Target. Cecilia has published 2 illustrated books with Penguin Random House, The Book of Memory Gaps and The Book of Extraordinary Deaths. A Gift from Abuela, her first picture book published by Kendall Wick Press, is a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection. Her latest picture book, published by Enchanted Lion Books, is Mr. Fiorello's Head. Cecilia's work is anchored in traditional printmaking techniques. Her geometric, stamp-like style lends itself to simple, happy expressions, but her most compelling works are the ones in which melancholy hides within the bold colors and shapes. Cecilia was born and raised in Mexico City and now lives in Brooklyn, where she teaches at the School of Visual Arts, Queens College, and Parsons. Please join me in welcoming Cecilia.
Thank you, Hannah. That was very nice. Yeah. Can you hear me? And Gabby, that was amazing. Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna set up my timer because last year I went for too long, and I don't want that to happen. I'm glad they still invited me this year. So here we go. Okay. Okay. So that's me. That's my name. I'm Cecilia Ruiz. I was born and raised in Mexico City. And like you heard in my bio, I'm a graphic designer. So I studied graphic design in Mexico City for my undergrad. And when I graduated, this is the kind of work that I was doing, just very straightforward graphic design, mostly print. So this is a tequila bottle that I designed, and it was one of my greatest achievements at the time. And and here you can see some of my interests when it comes to just graphic elements. I love decorative elements. I love borders. I love texture, and I love when things look old. I like that look. So within my graphic design, I was always trying to make things look a little worn out. it was also a trend, you know, like the grunge filter. But I always like to draw, and I mean, I was in my design, I always try to incorporate my own drawings. And in graphic design school, it's funny how it happens. You have drawing classes, but then at some point you drop drawing by hand, and then you just draw with the computer. And that's what happened to me. I just got very comfortable drawing with the computer and using software and doing vector illustration, and then maybe in Photoshop I would add textures, and I would make it look, you know, worn out and have that old look. But like this. This was early 2000s, and you know the retro look was a thing, and robots were coming back. So this was the type of illustration that I would do in my free time, and I didn't even know that there was like a career path just as illustrator. So I enrolled in a program. This was after I had graduated. I had been working as a graphic designer for maybe 5 years. And I wanted to get back to draw with my hands and do things with my hands. So I enrolled in a continuing education program in Mexico. And I started drawing with my hands and just trying to tell stories with pictures. So this was watercolor, and this program was really, really helpful because it allowed me to build an illustration portfolio. And with that illustration portfolio, I applied to grad school. And I moved to New York. And this was also, for me, it was a great excuse to leave my parents' house. I was like 27, and I was still living with my parents in Mexico, and I didn't see a way out. So I thought moving to New York was going to be the best, the best excuse. So yeah, I got a scholarship and I came to New York. And this was in my first semester in grad school. Our teacher gave us a short story. This was the name of the story. It was called Ostrakon by this guy named Alex Rose. And he said, you're going to read this story, and then you have to come up with a project. And for this project, the only condition is that you're going to do a series of illustrations. You don't have to illustrate the book directly if you don't want to. You'll do whatever you want. So I read it, and the story was about a woman with Alzheimer's. And it was a really sad short story. But it was a perfect theme for me because I've always been fascinated by memory and also terrified of memory loss. So I just started doing a lot of research about memory and memory disorders. And I found all these different memory phenomena that I didn't know about, and very specific memory disorders. And I stumbled upon that one that is highlighted, that is called hyperthymesia. And that is kind of like the opposite of disorder, is very good memory, extremely good memory. And there are very few cases that have been registered of people that cannot forget. So that reminded me of one of my favorite short stories by Borges. And that is called Funes de Memorias. And Funes de Memorias is a fictional story of a character named Ireneo Funes, who, after falling off his horse and receiving a bad head injury, acquired the amazing talent, or curse, of remembering absolutely everything. So this is one of my absolute favorite short stories. And reading about this disorder, I was like, I wonder if Borges knew that this was a real thing, that there had been accounts of people like Funes. So I was like, I don't know. But then I was like, oh, what if I create a series of characters just like Funes, but with all these different memory disorders? So that was the base of the idea I had for this project. And then another one of my inspirations and favorite artists, illustrators, is Edward Gorey. And was one book that I stumbled upon, and I just love how weird it was, and how I couldn't, I couldn't tell exactly what I was feeling. It was funny, but also a little macabre, and also I didn't know if it was for children or if it was for adults. And I just love that. And also, I love the format. I love small books. This is a really small book, tiny book. And it doesn't have a continuous narrative. It's just snippets and vignettes, stories. It's an alphabet book. In each page, a child dies in a different way. And it's an alphabet book, so it's very lyrical. A is for Amy, who fell down the stairs. E is for Ernest, who choked on a peach. T is for Titus, who flew into bits. But the other thing that I really like about this book and about Edward Gorey is how he illustrates and how he never repeats himself with the text and with the image. You always get something with the text, and then the image is telling you something different. And there's a play in terms of time as well, which I feel like my instinct as illustrator was always to kind of like show what the text is saying, show it in the moment. But Edward Gorey really plays with time, and he might show the moment before or the moment after what is being said. So I really, really like that. So going back to Borges and then Edward Gorey, I was like, I'm gonna make a book with characters and miniature stories, and each character is gonna be based on a different memory disorder. You're gonna notice as I go that the names of the characters are Russian. And I always get this question, why are they Russian? And the reason is, well, I'll wait a moment. But this was one character, and this guy suffers from visual agnosia, which is an impairment in recognizing visually presented objects. So you confuse one object with another one. So I was like, oh, he's gonna be carrying a bouquet of sorts because he's in love. But it's not gonna be flowers. This woman, Veronica, she has another condition that she's bad with faces. This is very common. Sometimes people can have a hard time remembering faces. So that's what happens to her. And then her story is that she creates perfumes, and then she gives them to the people she loves, so she can know when they are around. So this was my project in school, in grad school. The reason one of my ideas was that as I was doing research, I learned about this Russian neurologist who documented a lot of these cases. So my idea was that this book was going to become like the journal of that doctor. At the end, that idea didn't show, but then I kept the names. But that idea didn't stay. So this book, I graduated in 2012 from grad school, and then in 2015 this book became a book. But at the time, when it was when it was acquired, my editor was like, "Yeah, we love it, we're ready," and I was like, "I don't like the illustrations. I had gone through grad school and I had changed the way I drew, and I I didn't like these paintings, drawings at all. And I also didn't enjoy making them. I suffered while I was making this. I don't like making a lot of objects. I was trying, to perspective and like weird angles, and I just hated. I suffered through it. So I was like, of course I want to publish this book, but can I redo all the illustrations? And she was like, sure. So this is the new version. So I'll read these short stories for you so you know what they sound like. Valentin does not remember how certain objects look. Thus, he often mistakes one thing for another. Lately, he has been carrying around all kinds of bouquets. It appears the little boy is in love. Nadia. Even though Nadia has never seen the ocean, she believes she remembers swimming in it. She vividly recalls its smell and the way the salt water made her eyes sting. She remembers an unfamiliar vastness she longs to feel again. Lucia. The farthest Lucia was able to get out of her house was determined by the number of scarves she owned. She started mistrusting her memory 2 years before, when one afternoon she was unable to find her way home. So this is the format and the type of stories, and I think it's 14 stories altogether. But one of the stories is based on a story of my great-grandmother growing up in Mexico. And my great-grandma, here she is, she lived by herself, and one day we were cleaning her home. She was still alive, and we discovered a bag of money she had been saving. She forgot she had been saving it, and that money was no longer in circulation. There had been the currency had changed in Mexico in the 90s, and we all had to change our money. So she forgot she had been saving, and then she now, 20 years later, she had this bag of useless money. So I adapted that story as a children's book. And these are the illustrations. And you can see how my style just started getting simpler and simpler, flatter and flatter, more geometric and more geometric. And in this children's book, it was great to just get to draw things from my childhood. This was the meat shop around my grandparents' house. This is the illustrated version. This is a park and a bench, a classical Mexico City bench. And that's me on the left, looking very sad, even though I'm wearing a marshmallow necklace. I don't know. And then after I finished A Gift from Abuela, I had a very hard time coming up with another book. And I was trying really hard to, and I had shifted more to children's book, or at least to, I like to say I like to do books for adults that look like they are for children. But I was really having a hard time coming up with an idea. And this guy appeared into my life in a very interesting way. Does anyone know what a lipoma is? So my husband, Philip, who is sitting there in first row, I was hugging him one day, as a wife should be hugging a husband, and I felt a lump on his back. And I was like, Philip, I think you should get this checked. So he went to the doctor, and he came back and he said, we don't need to worry, it's a lipoma, it's a benign lipoma. So we were very pleased about that. And we were also very amused with the name. We liked how it sounded. So then we developed this character, and he became part of our household, Mr. Lipoma. And every birthday celebration, or maybe just random day, we would write notes coming from Mr. Lipoma. And Mr. Lipoma has a friend, so we have all this story about them. But I really, really enjoy drawing him. And I had never had that as an illustrator or drawer. I never had like my go-to. And all of a sudden, I found myself drawing Mr. Lipoma everywhere. And it just felt really comfortable because he's so, so many circles. It's really, it's easy to draw him. So on one hand, that's Mr. Lipoma, but then on the other hand, as I was drawing him, Mr. Lipoma in a way reminded me of my father, who lost his hair very young. I never met my father with more than that hair. And then if you look closer in this photo, you can see that. And he, growing up, we always kind of made fun of him, which is terrible. But he was good sport about it. And we would, those hairs, we would make fun of him, and we would tease him and say that he was doing a comb over. He was like, no, I just don't know what to do with those. Anyway, so I came up with this idea to make, I thought this is great because I can just have a person in the mirror trying to tame these hairs, and he tries this and they go the other way, and he cuts them short, but then they grow. So I thought that I wanted to do this book that it was always just one face looking in the mirror, and it never, whatever he wanted to do never happened. But it was kind of like, My agent was like, I don't know. I don't think so. I think we need something more hopeful, So I was thinking, about this obsession. I mean, the being in the mirror and the self-obsession, and just looking at oneself. And then at some point I was like, why? Maybe he needs to leave his bathroom, and the mirror, and that's it. So I did this horrible drawing of him walking out of his apartment. But that really helped me figure out what the ending of this book was. Because he leaves, he's like, I'm done with the mirror, going out. So he goes out into the world. So these were my initial illustrations, my initial sketches, final illustrations. And then the world opens up to him, and he lets other things grow. So that's the ending of the book, and that's the ending of my presentation on time. Thank you.
I think she followed Gabby very well. How about some more applause for Cecilia Ruiz?
So moving. No, really.
Same with you.
We talk in class about, sorry everyone, hold on a moment. No, but we talk so much in poetry class when we're talking about the weather of the poem and how you can have this space outside of language that's so deeply moving. And I look at those, I wish we could put one up. I look at it and I think he is so moving to me because of what you do to the whole space around him. Yeah. There's such depth, there's such...
I mean, that's the beauty of working with images and text.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you don't say with the words, you can say with the images. And
Yeah, but a lot of people can't. I mean, it's so good.
So if we have any questions, can you just please wait until Sarah gets to you with the microphone so our people who are looking at the viewing from home can actually hear the questions. Any questions that we have for our wonderful teachers? Sarah.
Thank you. This is for both of you. Do you have dream projects that you've never done?
do I have I do have dream projects. I have one dream project that I've been working on it, and I just can't get it done because I think it's too long. But I have a dream project of the memory gaps thing becoming like a staged thing, which I only had that dream because someone, a theater company approached me at some point and they were interested. So I saw the potential and I was like, yeah, that'd be great, but it has not happened. But the thing that happened that I'm just gonna, which is amazing, a music composer created a music album of the memory gaps. So you should look it up because it's beautiful. And he composed a song, just instrumental, for each of the characters. And it's really, really gorgeous. So I guess in a way that did happen. But yeah.
Your dream came true. What about you?
You know, it takes me so long to do things that everything feels like a dream project, because it might, I mean, I really mean that. I've been working on this, and I guess that I would say I am someone who dreams a lot, like I daydream a lot. And so each book is kind of both a dream project, like, oh, I want it to happen, and also something I've been dreaming. I mean, I think there's this is true of everyone, but I do think like there's something about daydreaming and queerness, and I was just a born daydreamer. I do have, I mean, in the bio it talks about this, The Year I Didn't Kill Myself, and this novel, and I've been working on both of those for a long time. I think that book, The Year I Didn't Kill Myself, is actually turning into this whole other thing that I have been sort of secretly working on. Mary Oliver, in her incredible book of essays, Upstream, she's a really good essayist, actually. Like she has this really, have people read that book? She has a great moment in that book where she talks about having made a handsome life for herself. And I've gotten, in the last couple of years, very interested in that. I've been giving talks about Mary Oliver, and particularly about wild geese. And so that Year I Didn't Kill Myself book has become more about like what it is to live a handsome life. I don't know. I'll be like 90. I still dream that I'm a writer, if that makes sense. Like not in a, but it's like, oh, yeah. I see a hand.
Oh, to me? Okay. Hi. Thank you both for those lovely and inspiring talks. Something that thematically struck me that you both were talking about, or maybe Gabrielle and yours more implicitly, was this kind of simplicity. When you read the Miss You poems, as I'm a poet and I write a lot of elegies for my mother, and I struggle to write elegy. It's a really hard form. And I think the simplicity of just saying miss you is so striking, but I'm often afraid of that kind of simplicity because it veers into cliche for me and to my ear in my own writing. And when you were talking about how your drawings became simpler, less cluttered, more flat, so I just wonder about maybe there being a kind of bravery to work towards simplicity, and if you have advice for maybe younger artists that overcomplicate things sometimes.
Will you remind me of your name? I'm Gabby.
I'm Sophia.
Hi, Sophia. I really hear that. I really feel that. It reminds me when I was at Sarah Lawrence. Mark Doty was my first teacher, and we had this thing where you would do conferences at Sarah Lawrence, and I I remember I would go in and I was like writing these long, like ornate, intricate poems that were not very good, like whatever that means, but they just weren't my voice, you know? And he would look at me and he would say, there's this thing called a voice, and you have one. And then like stare at me, and I'd be like, would you like to see my poem where I like walk into the river with Virginia Woolf and Sylvia Plath, like, and put rocks in my pockets and the whole thing? I don't say that to like make fun of myself. I say that I did, for a lot of years, I wrote a kind of poem that maybe didn't always feel rewarding to me about the loss of my own mother, for instance. It felt, but it taught me a lot, right? I think that the place you're in right now, which may be a place of feeling like cliche to you, right? Or something melodrama, something like that. I think that that's a really necessary space, because like you're hitting the heart gong. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not downplaying it. You're figuring out the sound, it seems to me possibly, of like what the heart gong kind of sounds like. And then I did that for a long time, and then at some point I began to just figure out like, okay, but like what do my actual sentences sound like? How do I breathe? What's my grammar like? What would it be like if I just like looked at my grandmother who died, or my friend Jenny, and just said, miss you? That would be so hard for me to do, right? But also like such liberation. But it took time for me to do that, and I'm so struck thinking about Cecilia's work, and when you had the gory up and you were talking about all the different things sort of work can do at once, I think that that's something that it took me a long time to figure out how to do, and it sounds to me like you're also working into that. How do you have that big, deep feeling? Cliche is just like something that feels amazing and true, right? That's it. And then how do you then figure out your grammar so people are like, oh my gosh, miss you. You know why miss you works in those poems? Is because it's miss you, period. Really, like it's just like sentences. If I did miss you, comma, would like to take a walk with you, comma, it would just build up a kind of energy that would feel like cliche to people. It's just I just like breathed in a different way. Does that make sense? I think it took me 46 years to figure out how to do that. It sounds to me like you're like much farther along than me at this point.
I agree. I mean, I feel very similar to what Gabby was saying in terms of my illustration. And when I enrolled in illustration school, I had all these ideas about what illustration should be and what it should look like stuff very rendered, you know, and complex compositions and shadow and light. And because I like those illustrations, so I was like, oh, I want to do that. And it seems like that's, you know, it needs to look like it took a long, long time for it to be good. So that's what I thought I needed to do. And then I tried, and I hated it. And I also was not that good at it, you know? Like some of my teachers were like, oh, we don't know about these, you know? Like they're not that strong. And I was like, yeah, they're not that great. And I also had a really bad time making these. But I had to try, and I had to make those in order to kind of like understand what I felt comfortable with. And I realized that I was just really comfortable with my graphic style, and kind of like my comfort zone is like the flat stuff and geometry, and I love it. I truly love the simplicity of geometry, you know, like I find the circle just beautiful. And just I had to accept that and kind of like embrace that and then lean onto that. And then I actually enjoy the making of the images way more. And I think maybe it shows. I don't know. I just hope that it shows. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I love both your presentations, and you could both be comedians. I think it's like I mean, you had me at 17 scarves there, and have you? It looked like you had a little bit of animation in your presentation. I mean, is that something you've done more of? And, you know, it's like, because, I mean, your agent should get you to like Pixar, because I think that would, you know,
The
it would be-
animation, Philip has helped me a lot with animation, and I love to see my work animated, but I don't want to do it because it's so much work. It is so much work. But I do work in a way that everything is actually movable. So if I hand in my files to an animator, they can do anything they want with it. So I hope, yeah, that it can move more.
Actually, both of you, animation, have you thought about animation for your?
I don't know about animation, although I'm really interested in any kind of collaboration with other artists. You know, people talk about accessibility and things like that, and I don't know how, you know, I don't know what I think about accessibility in terms of like, oh, your poems are so accessible. People will say to me, I would hope that what my poems are is like firm in their position and also fallible and generous. And they like to be in communication with other beings. And so I think it would be really cool. I mean, I've had people do musical things and some kind of performance stuff. But I think there are poems that lend themselves to a kind of visual world, and that would just be fascinating to me. Yeah, yeah. Can I ask? I think there's a question over here. Is there a question over here? Then I have a question. Oh, there's not? Okay, I have a question that I think will open 1,000 questions in this room. No, but I'm really interested. Edgar, who swallowed the peach, or choked on the peach, that's also my favorite. From when, yeah, like, do you love Edgar?
I love that one. I bought it as a magnet, and that's the one I chose.
Yeah, when I was little, we had that book in the house, and I really spent a lot of time on Edgar.
Yeah.
I also think if Edgar was up there, I think I looked and I was like, I mean, that's what I want my poems to do exactly.
Yeah.
And I wonder what it is about Edgar you like, or the world of Edgar.
I mean, I think it has to do with simplicity
Yeah.
too.
Mhm.
Like, as an illustrator, I love just economy of visual elements. So, earnest. There, I mean, you only see what you need to see. You know, there are no extra things in there. And then he hasn't eaten the peach.
Yeah.
Which to me, that's just brilliant. So there's so much tension.
Yeah.
There's so much tension. Yeah. And it's a bell. It's a bell. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. It's a telling detail. All you need to know about Edgar is there. You know, with very simple elements. I mean, look at the size of that table. Yeah.
There's so much there.
Yeah.
I was looking because we had this book at home, and I spent a lot of time with this book, but that's the one I thought, oh yeah, and but there's everything there, and there's stuff about.
And he's happy. I mean, he's like,
Yeah. And it's also so dark. You know, like he's happy, and there's also, we were talking about this with Forrest's work. Remember when we were at the, that there's also just like this whole other narrative that's not being told to you.
Yeah,
but there's a kind
exactly.
of tension, there's a kind of pressure, there's some sort of menace almost, but also it's deeply there's something so pleasurable about it. I just was wondering for you if Ernest was a special one for you, because Ernest was really special for me.
Yeah.
And I think like you could look at that and see the Miss You poems. Like you could look at that and see My Perimenopausal Cistern. You could look at that and see this poem I wrote called Hammond B3, Cistern Organ. Like you could see that.
yeah, that's a very special one for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I picked that one.
Yeah,
And when
yeah.
I went to Edward Gorey's museum, that's the one I bought.
Yeah.
But I also, I agree. And looking at forest paintings yesterday, I was thinking the exact same thing. In forest paintings and in all of Edward Gorey's stuff, there's a presence, like an invisible presence, and you don't know what it is, and it just gives you an eerie feeling. But I think that's what I find fascinating.
Yeah.
That you cannot really put your finger on it, on what exactly it is.
Right. And maybe that is what cliche, when we talk about cliche in a way, like, because I'm a big lover of cliche, but when it's less effective, maybe it's also that there's not all that other stuff behind it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've said the thing and it's made a certain kind of sound, but there's not actually all the tension and all the depth and everything behind it. And so you could probably even just say it exactly the same, but pace it a little differently, place it somewhere else in the poem, like just reimagine, and then all of a sudden it becomes earnest. You know, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ernest does that to people.
When you were, I don't know, for some reason, like the earnest, Gabby, in your poem, I think it was the perimenopausal body, when you have the line about, you list the friends from Catholic school, and you have the line about, I'm the reason why they all got kicked out. That's a story for another time. That kind of, I don't know, to me, like, that's a really interesting choice to include that line in the poem. Was that the perimenopausal body poem?
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know if you have anything you would want to share about I'm not asking you to share the story, but your choice to include that line. Like, you know, did you play with that? What made you keep it?
Yeah. And this is, I mean, Sarah Schulman is just a writer and a being who has helped me tremendously. And there's a thing about poetry and heroism, right, that I think is kind of addictive and complicated. And that poem is a poem in which, I mean, that was a very hard poem for me to write. I wrote that at a point where I had bled every single day for like 11 months. I mean, it was really bad. And I was really sick. And so there were all kinds of reasons where, like, I might have wanted to remove various parts of my body, and that I'd already kind of wanted to remove. There was also a way in which that poem, as I was writing it, I could feel that it was a poem that was probably, that had a certain kind of feel to it, and that probably did speak to a lot of people, and that was moving, and, you know, and I came to this after, you know, I'm gonna put a little finger up, I'm gonna talk about suicide for a second. You know, I started really writing poems because my mom took her life when I was 13, and I had a long time. One of the things that I recognized when I was in college was I was writing lots of poems about my mom's suicide, and people loved them, right? People would cry, and and it wasn't like I was manipulative, or I was or knowingly manipulative, or I was like taking advantage, or, you know, but there was a way in which I was taking a kind of pleasure in a way in her suffering. You know, I was becoming the hero of her story, which, like, I am most certainly not. There's also, like, almost no, like, heroes in the story of, you know, a woman in rural Vermont in the Reagan era, you know, deeply mentally ill and deeply poor. I certainly was not a hero in that. But I did have my own part of the story. That moment in the poem is a moment where, in terms of register, the poem is lifting, right? There's a lot of things that are happening that might feel very familiar. I'm authentically myself in that poem. It's also true that Brian is a child. We were all children, and a few weeks later, something happened, and I absolutely, I didn't realize it at the time, but I told on him in a way about something that actually was not that big a deal, and he got kicked out. And I think he absolutely got kicked out because I was white and he was black, right? I'm working through that in other stuff. And there was a moment where I was imagining, like, we really did have that conversation. They drew me. We drew me on the ground. We called it a sex change then. Like, we really talked about it. We decided it was going to be $5. We were like, that is going to be $5. It's funny, it's moving. A couple weeks later, something happened with Brian, and I told on Brian, and I did not need to tell on Brian, and Brian was no longer in school, in daycare, like the next day. And I don't think I recognized at that age, but I recognize now. And so I can't tell that story with Brian drawing me without also like recognizing, even to myself, even if a reader doesn't understand, turning to myself and saying like, yeah, and 2 weeks later, like your body did this thing, you know, if that makes sense. And I don't know that I manage it very well in the poem, but it was important to me in that moment. Heroism is something I think a lot about, like what is really heroic, high register heroic, and what are just like everyday people, you know, making mistakes and trying their best, but also being, you know, monstrous in other ways. Oh.
Thank you both so much. I just wanted to ask more about your experience. You were talking about being younger and writing about your mother's death. And do you remember a moment when you transitioned out of writing, or like that as a subject? Is it still a subject, but it's changed? What's been the evolution?
I will never stop writing about my mother's death. I mean, and like even when I'm not writing about my mother's death, I'm writing about my mother's death. And I don't say that in a light way. Sometimes it, but I mean, to invoke Marie Howe again, I remember I went in school and I said to Marie, what if I only ever write about my mother's suicide? And Marie like looked at me, and the way people who know Marie like looked at me, and she just said, what if you do? I think that that's a way of saying, it's always there, because my mother dying, my mother's illness, my mother being, I was in a very wealthy family, my mother was very poor. Watching that, watching what happened to her, watching what a government could do to a body, I will never stop thinking about those things. I mean, people talk about my work being about love and friendliness and all these things, and I think like my work is about power, you know, and what people do to one another, and how easy it is for people who don't have power to make, to the minute they have power, make the decision to oppress other people. And like, that's a, you know, and so I think that I always will write about her. I write about lots of things, and I come at it from different angles, and I'm older than her now, which is like stunning to me. She was 42 years old, I'm 49. But I think that I've given myself permission also to know, like, she's just always gonna be there. Why haven't I written a Miss You poem? Maybe if the portal opened, I wouldn't know quite what to say to her. That'd be a toughie, you know. That'd be a toughie. Thank you.
Remember, they'll both be signing books at the back of the room. Come back tomorrow night. We've got yet another wonderful faculty event with poet Dante Michaud and poet Kimiko Han, who's here. I saw her. She left. She's still great, and it's still going to be great tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. Have a great night.